Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Lyn. I'm an author, life coach, and community director for Pathway to Hope. Pathway to Hope is an online community for women who are looking to trust themselves again, set boundaries, and gain clarity for healthier relationships. I'm here also with Patrick Doyle. He's a best-selling author, counselor, and expert in emotional and spiritual abuse. So we're here today to answer your questions and talk about topics that you've requested. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you.
So in my experience, a lot of times with my clients, I notice there's a common thread here, or a pattern where the person that is harming them is not only emotionally abusive, but tends to have some form of addiction or is addicted to something. I'm wondering if you find that as common and if there is a connection between emotional abuse and addiction from your perspective.
Yeah. I would say there's definitely a connection, and I would say there's a high percentage probability that those two things are going on at the same time. And to be more clear, I just want to talk about how I see addiction, which is a little different. I don't see addiction as genetic or biological. I see it as the result of that person experiencing a lot of pain that they don't deal with, and then they use some sort of behavior to try to numb that pain. And from my perspective, drugs and alcohol are just a couple. You can isolate, you can work, you can spend money, you can, sex, you can, tons of ways that you can operate in.
Religion.
Religion is actually a very popular one, yeah. And so the person that's I get nervous when I say this, but every person who's abusive is also broken. Okay, and the reason why I get nervous about saying it is because 99% of the women or the people in abusive relationships that I work with are very compassionate. They want to help. They're loving. They're kind. They're generous. And if they see the brokenness of that person, sometimes what they do is now they get into a place where they're going to help or fix it. But the problem is with someone that has that level of pathology or that level of brokenness, there's nothing you can do to fix it. If that was the case, you would do the right thing a couple times and they would change and everything would be great. But that's not the case. We have decades of behavioral pattern where that doesn't happen. So addiction, it can be a lot of things. So we're not just talking about substance. We're talking about lots of behavior patterns, okay? And one of the ones that I see most common in abuse is there's some sort of also sexual addiction for the person that's being abusive. So one of the things I would say is the common denominator between addiction and abuse is that the person who's abusive or harmful and the person who's addicted both have industrial strength denial. That is the common denominator. It's not that they have an addictive personality. No, they have denial. And instead of, all the years I worked in addiction, people would say, "Oh, they died from alcoholism. They died from drug addiction." I'm like, no, they died from denial. Their addiction is a symptom. Their behavior is a symptom of that denial. Same with the harmful, abusive patterns of behavior toward their partner or their spouse. They have to have massive levels of denial. So you take that broken person when they're young, they have some cataclysmic wound, and let's be clear, the wound is always in the eyes of the beholder. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So if that person is wounded in their eyes, then that's what matters. So that wound, for example, I was abused as a kid. I have siblings that were abused as a kid. How we chose to deal with that had huge implications in how we treated other people. I went through a process of dealing with and forgiving and working through the pain and the loss of being an abused child. I have siblings who chose to use substance instead. So that, and then that denial that goes with that wound, it allows them to deny anything. So this is how somebody gets to be a narcissist, is because they can deny anything. They can rationalize, minimize, justify any behavior that they have. So if you can do that, with harming your closest partner, your spouse, your children, then how easy is it going to be to justify using porn or over drinking or whatever, fill in the blank. So that denial is the key. And that denial is also why no amount of your effort will change it. So once you start to see the level of denial that person has, then you have to start dealing with the reality and the consequences of that person's harm towards you is not going to change other than to escalate. Then you have to choose what you're going to do. Many people choose to live in it, and may God be with you in that process, because I understand sometimes circumstances are what they are, but you can't fix it. And that's that thing I would say is the common denominator is the denial that person has is what's going to keep them unwell.
Okay. What would you say to someone who feels compassion for someone that's addicted, but is also being harmed by their behavior?
Well, as long as your compassion doesn't allow you to make it possible for them to continue to harm you. So compassion in this case would be to set a boundary and stop them from harming you. The most loving thing you can do when someone you love is harming you is stop them. That is the most loving thing you can do. So your compassion would lead you to stopping them. If you're going to make excuses for their behavior and live in it, that's different. That's you making excuses for that harm. And that's something I would want to try to help you work through, not allow you to stay in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For someone listening who is with someone who is both emotionally harmful and possibly addicted, what would you say is the first step for them?
First thing I want you to do is sit down and write yourself a resignation letter. I, effective immediately, resign from being able to help this person. Stop putting your energy into helping someone who's displayed over a long period of time that their behavior is not going to change regardless of the interaction. And then, instead of putting that energy that you were putting into trying to make this work, put it into making yourself well. Put it into taking care of yourself. If just 5% of the energy you put into that relationship goes to you, you're going to have a radical life change. Mm-hmm. And listen, I get it. It's really, really difficult to watch someone self-destruct. It's really difficult to see someone in pain and then they just keep adding on.
Not just someone, but someone you really care about.
Correct. Even worse, right? And I've seen this. Both my parents died of addiction. I have one sister who died of addiction already. So I get it. And yet I also know that I'm a trained professional. I tried to help. I can't. I couldn't. And I'm capable. I actually know what to do. So the idea that you can fix it is the first thing you have to stop believing. And then a well you is the best gift you can give that person. Your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your family, whoever, you being well, which is not going to happen with someone who's out of control and harming you. Mm-hmm. So addiction in its nature is a loss of control. Someone who's harming you in a relational sense is a loss of control. And so you getting space from that in whatever way possible, I would encourage. And I also would just want to add that if you are really struggling with someone who's addicted, I did a whole course on this, which you can find on my website under the resources tab. But really, because I also understand just how difficult this is. Mm-hmm. And every one of us needs help with this when we're in it. So that's why I did it, so I could try to help you guys in that situation. But number one thing is you can't fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And his website is patrickdoyle.life. If you found this helpful, we actually created more free resources for you. And if you go to the link in the description below and click under free resources, you can sign up there for those. And until next time, thank you, Patrick, again.
Yep. Yeah, my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.